Welcome to That's Good Sports. I'm your football host, Brandon. It only took me 3 extra weeks to finish the NFC East Power Rankings episode, Perna. And no, it's not because I spent extra time making this video very good. It's because my writing partner and podcast co-host, Will Keys, had an apartment fire last week when we were working on this episode. Literally an apartment fire that he had to call 911 for and escape. So we talked about that on my second channel, That's Good Broncos, in our podcast. If you want the full story, it's there. Today, though, is about the NFC East offseason as I power rank last year's least impressive division. Can Dak's return take Dallas to the top? Jalen Hurts or Jalen plays like the squirts? You know I love Fitzmagic, but will the football team parlay a great defense into success this year? And damn it, Jones, stop fumbling the ball and maybe the Giants will be good. That's good, sports. Hey, football season's about to start, so if you don't subscribe to this YouTube channel now, you'll probably enjoy the 2021 football season much more. Much more. Today, though, I have a big dick Patreon shout out for Tyler Bean with a $20 per month donation. $20 per month at patreon.com/thatsgoodsports opens up the fantasy leagues for you to play in. We will be doing fantasy drafts at the end of August, first week of September. I'll be putting that info up on Patreon. And, of course, BenchwarmerBrew.com. You can support my channel by buying my... that doesn't sell beans. I don't know what will. At the bottom of the power rankings of the NFC East, I'm giving it to the Philadelphia Eagles. 2 primetime games, though. Finished last season 4-11-1, and of course tanked the last game by inserting Nate Sudfeld. The only passer in that shit bowl that didn't throw a pick, by the way, was Greg Ward. Now the Eagles saw a totally winnable NFC East and decided, you know what, we're gonna Sudfeld it. Which is part of the reason Doug Peterson is no longer their head coach, despite winning the franchise's only Super Bowl just 4 years ago. What does the NFL stand for? Say it with me, everyone. No forgiveness, losers. And for losers, things move very quickly in the league. Peterson gone, EDP gone, and Carson Wentz traded to the Colts for a 3rd rounder and a conditional 2nd, including the Eagles eating most of that massive contract. It's kind of an incestuous trade, too, considering Frank Reich used to be the Eagles' offensive coordinator, and now the Eagles' new head coach is the former Colts OC Nick Sirianni, who had a pretty shaky press conference to start his career and used rock, paper, scissors to judge the competitiveness of draft prospects. And probably the same technique to determine if they should keep Zach Ertz. And it looks like Zach Ertz will return to Philly after an off-season of speculation about trade, so congrats, Philly. So QB Jalen Hurts is the presumptive starter heading into 2021, but they also added Joe Flacco and Nick Mullins for some reason. If Hurts doesn't win the QB battle, I think we could be talking about this team winning the rights to draft Spencer Rattler in the 2022 NFL Draft. Look, I get the Mullins signing, but having Joe Flacco back up the athletic specimen that is Jalen Hurts is like taking your Porsche into the shop and then getting a horse and buggy as a loaner. Your backup should be able to play a similar style of offensive football as your starter. Yes, Flacco's performance at QB since winning the Super Bowl has been offensive, but that's not what I mean. In the 2021 draft, the Eagles did nab a few players I liked, starting with wide receiver Devontae Smith, the Heisman winner, whose only flaw as a human being is needing to put on about 10 pounds. They doubled down on Bama, taking Crimson center / guard Landon Dickerson in the 2nd round, finally providing balance in the trenches with Dick on O and Cox on D. Then, of course, they scored one of the most aptly named running backs of all time, Kenneth Gainwell, out of Memphis. If Gainwell lives up to his name, you might be looking at the Eagles' best back since LaShawn McCoy. No offense to Miles Sanders, who I think is good, but he just hasn't produced like Philly would have liked. So overall, a solid draft by Philly, but the team did not put as much effort into free agency. Aside from Flacco and Mullins, the Eagles signed safety Andrew Adams out of Tampa Bay. You know that he doesn't matter because apparently Tampa Bay can keep whoever they want. Being the one guy the Bucs didn't bring back has to sting. They also picked up Ryan Kerrigan, the leading sacker in Washington history, and they added safety Anthony Harris from the Vikings on a one-year deal. Now, Harris is a great signing that can help that defense immediately. Sure, he didn't have a stellar year last season, but that's because the Vikings had exactly 0 corners in front of their safeties. Put simply, I don't think this is a team that's trying to win in 2021. Maybe next year, unless, Jalen Hurts has a surprise breakout season, which is possible. This team seems set, though, on putting all of their energy into the future. Now, you could argue that even a team trying to lose could win the NFC East, but I don't think that's happening this year. Power ranks of 3, the New York Football Giants. And they get 3 primetime games. Now, along with the Dallas Cowboys, the Giants finished last season 6-10. Despite winning just 6 games, though, the Giants were in the mix until the very last week. In fact, after they started 0-5, New York did have a winning record in their last 11 games of the season. But we know why this team struggled overall, and the problem wasn't on the defensive side of the ball. Credit Joe Judge for getting that unit going. First of all, they lost Saquon Barkley almost immediately to a torn ACL. And despite having legs thicker than actual sequoias, Barkley is still not sure when he will return to the field this season. Quarterback Daniel Jones was also hurt, but when he was healthy, he was either tripping in the open field like Big Dick Decker or dropping the football anytime a defender got within 5 yards, or was in the process of taking 45 sacks. The Giants had one of, if not the worst, pass blocking units up front. Now that's usually never all on the offensive line, but a combo of a less than average line and a young or bad QB, which the Giants have. Now there is certainly a scenario where this team wins the NFC East, and it involves Daniel Jones cleaning up his crippling fumbling problem, getting rid of the ball quickly, and building a nice rapport with new wide receiver Kenny Golladay, one of my favorites, and watching the defense take another step forward. Oh, and Saquon would have to stay healthy for at least 13 or 14 games, which seems just as iffy as the other scenarios I mentioned. Aside from Kenny Golladay, who was their big free agent splash, the Giants added Dory Jackson from Tennessee, who's a really good corner when he's healthy, plus longtime Vikings tight end Kyle Rudolph, who I think can be a security blanket for Daniel Jones in all of the ways that Evan Ingram hasn't been, because Kyle can catch the ball. They also re-signed Leonard Williams for huge money after he put up 11.5 sacks in 2020. That's a lot for an interior defender. Unrelated, he also ate a still-beating heart of a tuna fish he caught. In terms of their draft, I really think they took some big swings with their first couple of picks that could net big returns if they do hit. Starting with receiver Kadarius Toney. He's a slippery guy that should complement Kenny Golladay, while Azeez Ojulari gives the Giants that edge rusher they need, with most of their juice coming on the inside with Williams and Dexter Lawrence. This could end up being a top 10 defense if Azeez and their 3rd round pick cornerback Aaron Robinson are able to contribute right away. But like I said earlier, this team is going to go only as far as Daniel Jones allows them to go. If he keeps treating the ball like a bar of soap, a hot potato, a bad relationship, things you drop, the Giants are going to be wasting a lot of potential. But if Jones can just play point guard and get the ball to his talented playmakers, which the Giants now have, this team can definitely compete for the NFC East or win it altogether. Coming in at 3, the Dallas Cowboys, who of course have 5 primetime games. For all of the weapons they had at their disposal last year, the Cowboys were a really boring team in 2020. At least they were after Dak Prescott's injury that forced Andy Dalton, Ben DiNucci, and Garrett Gilbert into the lineup over the course of the year. Now, we went into 2020 thinking that Andy Dalton would serve as leverage against Dak Prescott in his contract talks. Turns out Dalton's failures and the failures of the Cowboys without Dak gave Dak all the leverage in the world. So the Cowboys gave him a 4-year, $160 million deal, which Dak earned. Now, they do get Dak back, but Dak was still there in 2019 when they missed the playoffs. The problem is obviously not the quarterback or the offense in general, but the defense. That has been a calamity the last 2 seasons. So to change that, they started by hiring former Falcons head coach Dan Quinn to be their new defensive coordinator and official Miller Lite chugger, pairing him with his former Falcons safety Keanu Neal. Dan Quinn, of course, helped the Falcons deploy a defensive unit that gave up the most passing yards and the 4th most rushing yards last season. Basically a bottom 10 unit every year since the infamous 28-3 Super Bowl loss. In the draft, like every year, the Cowboys telegraphed who they wanted, which was Alabama corner Patrick Surtain. We know where he went. The Broncos. So the Cowboys settled on Penn State linebacker Micah Parsons, the crazy athlete with potential maturity issues and a few red flags. Equally important for Dallas is 2nd-round pick corner Kelvin Joseph, contributing right away to improve what was a horrible secondary in 2020. Overall, Dallas spent their first 6 picks on defense, not really hiding their priorities. Out of all of those picks, I think the best value was at 115th overall, where they picked LSU linebacker Jabril Cox, who's athletic and able to cover tight ends. Between Micah Parsons, Jalen Smith, Leighton Vander Esch, Jabril Cox, and Keanu Neal, who they do have listed at linebacker currently, Dallas better have a top 5 linebacking unit. Are those players going to transform this defense in 1 year? I would imagine not, but I don't think they can get much worse. I'm sure Dallas is relying on Dan Quinn to turn Kelvin Joseph into a shutdown corner because the team does not have one. I do think their secondary will benefit from a better pass rushing unit this year. I'm not banking on DeMarcus Lawrence though, who has disappeared ever since he signed his massive contract, which is becoming a fine tradition for the Cowboys, much like Zeke. But I honestly believe Randy Gregory will be good this season. Ultimately, this team has to be better than they were a year ago, barring a catastrophe, like Jerry Jones' yacht hitting an iceberg or Dak getting injured again. One of those outcomes would be hilarious, and the other would be really sad. And I'm not going to say which is which, but you can probably guess. Which leaves, number 1, the Washington football team, who do have 3 primetime games. They were division champs last year at 7-9. Despite being the most detestable franchise in the entire NFL, the Washington, not Warriors football team, to be rebranded in 2022 is the most fun, most exciting, and best team in the division, and I think at this point by a decent margin. Let's get to the most important move of the offseason for the football team. Ryan Fitzpatrick is Washington's starting QB, and I'm starting to believe the Red Hot Chili Peppers' blood sugar sex magic was just another name for Ryan Fitzpatrick. The man's enthusiasm for the game is more contagious than HPV. There's security behind him in Taylor Heineke, so I like the Washington football team's quarterback situation. Heineke played better against Tom Brady than Patrick Mahomes did last year. The offense also added wide receiver Curtis Samuel, which is a great pairing with one of the most underrated elite pass catchers in the game in scary Terry McLaurin, and Charles Leno at tackle, who is expected to bring Kevin Eubanks with him at some point. But I think Washington made a top 5 free agency signing when they landed former Bengals corner William Jackson on a 3-year, $40 million deal. That's a great piece to what turned out to be one of the best defenses in the league last year. Jackson called it a blessing to get out of Cincinnati. although I hope he realizes what organization he just joined. He hasn't picked off a ton of passes in his career, but with Chase Young and Montez Sweat, aka Rumpelstiltskin and Rapunzel, and Jonathan Allen getting pressure up front, I think he'll have plenty of opportunities in Washington. Even with Ryan Kerrigan gone, this pass rush will get better simply because you've got young players hitting their stride. Washington's first pick in the draft was a popular one with Kentucky linebacker Jamin Davis in the first round. Another great athlete in the front seven. They also nabbed two great names with edge rusher Shaka Toney and of course long snapper Cameron Cheeseman out of Michigan. Sorry Cameron, you're not a Packer. And hopefully soon, Aaron Rodgers isn't either. Much like my Denver Broncos, Washington's biggest problem in 2020 was quarterback. I believe they fixed that with Fitzpatrick. Here's what went unnoticed in Washington though, because Alex Smith was playing on 1.5 legs, Dwayne Haskins was a mess, and Heineke didn't get a chance until it was too late. The football team had one of the best pass blocking units in the league. Top 5 despite losing tackle Trent Williams. Running back Antonio Gibson was tearing it up before he suffered a turf toe injury in December that really slowed him down. Dude was averaging 4.7 yards per carry and had 11 rushing TDs and will be a great weapon for Ryan Fitzpatrick. Fitz might see the best protection he's ever had since growing that beard to protect his chin. I like Washington. I hate Washington, but I like the collection of players they amassed for the purpose of winning football games. I like Ron Rivera and assume he's going to be better at coaching this year now that he's not having to get chemo every week. In a very winnable division, they've got the best chance of doing just that. And that's great news for those of us who have been wishing to see playoff Fitz magic. Thanks for watching That's Sports. Please subscribe here on YouTube. I am on Twitter and Instagram at Brandon Perna.